I'm next to a place called Kfar Aza, which is a small Israeli Jewish community on the border with the Gaza Strip. We're about 1 mile from the Gaza Strip border and a few miles, therefore, from Gaza City. So we've been on the border for a few hours, and we've seen at least 20 rockets come out of Gaza over our heads or near us, and we've seen Israel's Iron Dome system intercept some of them, and we've also heard some mortar fire, and we've seen several airstrikes in the Gaza Strip in the distance.
And I believe one of those strikes was on a TV station controlled by Hamas?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've heard as well. So I don't have any way to confirm that. That's definitely what we also heard from colleagues and also on social media.
Tell us the backstory to this. It's been tense for some while, but it seemed to have literally exploded a few days ago.
Right, so for 6 months, there's been clashes on the Gaza border, usually every Friday, as part of what Hamas calls the Great March of Return. And that usually involved riots and protests in which around 200 Palestinians were killed and several thousand injured. And over those 33 weeks or so, 6 months, there's also been sniper fire on Israelis, and there's been a lot of rocket fire and some balloons that Hamas has launched over that have burned thousands of acres. So that's the kind of context. But just last night, there was an Israeli, I mean, it's not entirely, I think, clear or the information has not been fully released, but there were some Israeli troops in Gaza, and they got in a firefight with Hamas. Actually, we can just hear a boom in the background now. And a high-ranking officer was killed in those clashes and a senior Hamas commander. So then that kind of led to the tensions tonight, where I think around 200 or more rockets have been fired from Gaza, and many of them have come right over where I've been standing.
And this is a sufficiently significant escalation in the tension for your Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, to come back home from Europe. Is he back in the country?
He is, and our understanding is that there was a security cabinet meeting, and basically Netanyahu has given the approval for Israel to expand its operations against Hamas and Islamic Jihad, which is part of the Hamas kind of militant structure. So we don't exactly know what that will mean. It may mean that in the coming days there will be more airstrikes or other types of activity. What we're seeing now is just a lot more airstrikes. For instance, we can hear them, I don't know, every 10 or 20 minutes, and we've seen some, as you said, when you mentioned the TV station, we can see the whole sky light up in front of us. So it's quite clear that there's been a major escalation as on both sides, in the sense that Hamas has fired more than 200 rockets, and Israel has responded with this expanded at the moment air operations, basically.
Can you gauge the mood of your fellow countrymen and women as to how they feel about what's happening now?
Well, I think a lot of Israelis, especially the ones that live next to the Gaza border, which is a community of hundreds of thousands of people in the area affected by all these rockets. So I think many of those people have been saying, the government needs to find a way to bring quiet. And we've heard a lot of interviews recently where people have said, listen, Israel needs to really strike a blow and teach Hamas a lesson after all the 6 months. So I think a lot of them, these are people that have been sleeping, their kids and the families sleeping in iron armored rooms night after night, and the schools have been canceled. So they want some sort of an answer. But I think they feel that the government has not provided that answer, in the sense that it hasn't got a ceasefire that actually works, even though there were a bunch of little ceasefires. And the government also is not interested or willing to go into Gaza with a real major operation. So I think they feel that it's kind of this tit-for-tat cycle that is not bringing them any kind of quiet.
Seth Frantzman, we appreciate you bringing that fairly vivid description of what's going on. Please stay safe.